Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with another transfer talk roundup, talking about Aston Villa ins and outs and a potential emotional one, and one that I think a lot of Villa fans don't want to see. I think some Villa fans can maybe understand where it's coming from, but it could be the start of a bit of an evolution of the Aston Villa squad, and this player is hugely influential over the last few seasons, and will be a big hole to fill in the squad, but maybe potentially understandable as to what we're going to do. So we'll talk about him. We'll talk about the couple of options in terms of replacement for him, and also a highly touted striker across Europe is apparently in talks with Aston Villa. So hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and help us on the road to 6,000 subscribers, and get your comments and your thoughts on these potential incomings and outgoings. So without further ado, the player who we're talking about in terms of that emotional connection with Aston Villa and potentially departing is Emi Martinez. And last night was really eye-catching to see in terms of him at the end of the game after another clean sheet, and he's had multiple clean sheets at the end of this season, 3 in a row, and has been a huge part of Aston Villa's success over the last 5 years, but also success in terms of the last few games this season, and really stepped up after maybe not being quite as on form as he could have been across the rest of the season. And he was crying and very emotional after the game, and it did look like a goodbye. You know, lots of the other players sort of waving and doing their lap of honour, but Emi Martinez was markedly emotional, and that has caused shockwaves across social media and across Villa circles in terms of, you know, is that a goodbye? Is that him saying, is that his last game at Villa Park? And then Fabrizio Romano and all the other sort of journalists were then confirming that multiple offers have been put on the table for Emi Martinez, 2 across Europe and at least 1 over in Saudi. Doesn't look like he would take the Saudi offer, although I'm sure that the money is extremely tempting for him. But with the World Cup on the horizon, he probably wants to stay at a European club to keep himself sharp and keep himself as Argentina's number 1. But also in terms of him maybe wanting to win things, he hasn't yet won anything at Aston Villa, despite, you know, qualifying for the Champions League. I think that maybe that FA Cup semi-final was a big sort of loss for Emi Martinez. And whether he thinks, you know, can I give it another season at Aston Villa, or do I sign a new contract at Aston Villa and commit my pretty much the prime of my career to Aston Villa and hope that trophies come? And that's probably the decision that's on the table for Martinez, as well as Aston Villa as a club thinking, do we need to sell Emi Martinez when he's at probably his highest value? And with PSR on the horizon, with the wriggle room that we need, it's not necessarily, you know, the urgency to sell someone. It probably isn't quite there that it was last season. You know, I think there's talk of about 15 million that we need to raise, and you could probably raise that from selling someone like Kane Kessler-Hayden and Emi Buendia and Kostin Nedeljkovic or something like that. You could probably raise it with selling some of the fringe players, but we know if you've got to make a sale before that June 30th deadline, then you're going to have to sell someone who is wanted by clubs because they'll pay the value of what they're worth. So to give us that wriggle room, maybe you sell someone like Emi Martinez for 50, 60 million. You know, you've got the world's number 1 goalkeeper voted twice. You've got a top goalkeeper in the Premier League, probably 2 or 3 in the Premier League. You know, one of the top goalkeepers across Europe, and that commands a high fee. So you could understand why the club would consider it. And then if you think maybe he's not quite been at his best this season, you maybe think, well, look, could we bring in another goalkeeper, a really highly rated up-and-coming goalkeeper, maybe bring in 2 of those to fight for that position? Because we talked about you have to have Emi Martinez as your number 1. So who do you bring as number 2? Because someone has to be happy with sitting on the bench. Now, maybe you could have 2 goalkeepers fighting out for that position, 2 young up-and-coming goalkeepers. So that's another decision for the club to make. For me, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I am not really too bothered about who we sell, because I know that the club is in safe hands and we have saleable assets now. We have players who can command high fees, and we have an infrastructure at the club that will bring in players that will go on to improve the squad and go on to be top players. So I don't mind us looking at selling, and it could be a real evolution of the squad. We could see 3, 4, 5 big players go and generate a considerable amount of money for the club, which is exactly what they're there to do. So for me, I don't mind it. I'll be sad to see Emi Martinez go. He's been a wonderful player for us. He's been an amazing goalkeeper for us and has won us so many points. And maybe he's not quite been at that level this season, but he's certainly won us games again this season. You know, you talk about Bournemouth recently. Had he not made that save in the last kick of the game, we wouldn't have won that game. So he's been a huge part of our success, and we would be sad to see him go. But for me, the evolution of a football club is to sell players at a high value, make sure you make good money for them, and then reinvest in the squad. But I'll be interested for you guys to let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I know a lot of people are very, very, very worried about, you know, letting go of a goalkeeper of Emi Martinez's caliber and thinking, well, what does that do for the team? He's such a big character for us that would be a huge loss. Now, it could be that he's not actually leaving at all, and he was just emotional that it was the last home game of the season, and you know, maybe his future is a little bit uncertain, but you know, he's still in talks to maybe commit himself to the club. So it could be a bit of a fuss about nothing, but it doesn't seem like that. There does seem to be a decision to be made, and whether the decision's already been made by the club or whether the decision needs to be made by Emi Martinez, we'll obviously find out in the coming weeks. But as I say, let me know your thoughts in the comments. You know, Emi Martinez, would you be prepared to let him go to have other goalkeepers come in, or do you think it's a huge blow to the squad and you know, a massive hole to fill, and you're worried about us being able to do that? Now, a couple of goalkeepers that have been potentially lined up as replacements. The first one we covered a couple of weeks ago, Joan Garcia of Espanyol. Very, very, very highly rated goalkeeper. Probably the next one on the rank in terms of across Europe, and he's coveted by numerous clubs, including Newcastle, I believe, have been watching him and potentially looking to put in an offer. They're looking at a goalkeeper to replace Nick Pope. And I know James Trafford's been talked about by Newcastle, but also Garcia as well. Aston Villa obviously looking to try and do something with him. Monchi obviously trying to work his magic there. Spain under-21 goalkeeper. Played 52 times for Espanyol and 7 clean sheets this season. So he's available for around about the 30 million euro mark. So you could see potentially something like that happening. And whether it's a younger goalkeeper from Aston Villa's ranks coming in, Oliver Zeech or someone like that, maybe to be the number 2, we'll have to wait and see, because we know Robin Olsen's moving. Now, the backup goalkeeper if we can't get Garcia, is rumoured to be Andriy Lunin of Real Madrid. Now, Real Madrid's second choice goalkeeper, Ukrainian international, played 15 times for Ukraine, been at Madrid since 2018, has only appeared 35 times, but has been on loan to Oviedo, where he's appeared 20 times, and Leganés, where he's appeared 5 times. So not too many appearances, to be honest, but has some good games in the Champions League for Real Madrid, but probably looking to get first-team football somewhere and really start his career. And that's probably something that he wants to do. Now, it'd be interesting to see whether we do go for him. He's only appeared 5 times in La Liga this season and has 2 clean sheets, and 1 assist. Now, again, that for me would be a huge risk, because you're bringing in someone who hasn't had too much first team experience and then potentially asking him to be a number 1. Now, could it be that Garcia comes in as the number 1 and Lunin comes in to compete for that number 1 jersey as the starting off as the number 2? Now, maybe I could see that 2 goalkeepers of similar ages and looking to compete, as I say, for that number one spot and push each other on. You could probably see that, and then them both signing sort of longer term contracts, and maybe one of them plays in the cup competitions and one of them is the main goalkeeper, and then they sort of battle it out. That could be something, because we have suffered with as well as Olsen has done in certain games, we have suffered with that drop off of the second choice goalkeeper coming in. So if you've got two goalkeepers who aren't quite as good as Emi Martinez, because you're probably not going to get that, but two goalkeepers who could potentially develop to that level, competing against each other, then that's a way of solving that problem. So let me know your thoughts in the comments in terms of the goalkeeper, because you could probably get both of them, I would imagine, for around about the price that you sell Emi Martinez for. Now, in terms of striking options, Ollie Watkins has been a player who has been rumoured to be moving away from the club. And regardless of whether he stays or goes, I still think we need another striker. And the name that has been on probably everyone's lips across Europe is Jonathan David of Lille. Now, Villa tried to get him a year or two ago, and it's been pretty much every summer we've been linked to him every summer moving forward. But he's seen out his contract at Lille. He's now officially left and is available on a free transfer. We know what Aston Villa are like with free transfers. Boubacar Kamara, Yuri Tillemans. We know how we can get these deals over the line. And it has been reported that we are one of 4 clubs in talks with him. And that is alongside Tottenham, Napoli and Juventus. So I guess quite a lot of it will hinge on us getting Champions League football. He's obviously played Champions League football last season for Lille. And he is goals. He knows where the net is, and he's pretty ruthless in terms of that. He's had a couple of up and down spells, he's had a couple of injuries as well, but 25 years of age, Canadian international, really good finisher as one of his strengths, and a good penalty taker. So maybe covering Ollie Watkins in terms of those spots. And this season, 31 times he's played in the league, 27 starts, and he scored 16 goals. Missed 16 big chances as well. Now, is that going to cause a lot of grief for Aston Villa supporters? Because we know another striker who misses quite a few big chances. 4 goals with his left foot, 11 with his right foot, and 1 with his head. He has contributed 5 assists and created 8 big chances. And in terms of his dribbling, 51% in terms of successful dribbles, and total duels won 41%, ground duels won 45%. So I guess in that sort of mould of Ollie Watkins, he probably does tick a lot of boxes. Maybe slightly better finishing, maybe not quite involving himself in the game as much. Whenever I've seen him play, he hasn't involved himself too much in the game, but we know Watkins can be like that a little bit. In the Champions League, he's appeared 10 times, 8 starts, and scored 7 goals. So that is a brilliant record in the Champions League as well. So look, we know he knows where the goal is, and it's great that we're in talks with him. I guess the transfer fee will be compensated with his wages. So that would be great. But I think it'd be a real coup if we could sign him. And that would, I guess, really soften that blow if someone like Ollie Watkins was to move on, and we could bring in David and another young striker to learn off him and up and coming, albeit Jonathan David is only 25. Probably would take a little bit of time for him to settle into how the Premier League works. I'd imagine in Champions League, he's probably be a little bit more used to that, or European football. But Premier League probably take a bit of time. But like I say, when I've seen him, he's been quick, he's been strong, and he knows where the goal is. So if we create the chances for him, I think he would score them. And I'd be really sad to see Ollie Watkins leave, but I would be able to handle it if we were bringing in a player like Jonathan David, subject to him really, really being able to settle in and move forward with the club. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would you be happy to see Jonathan David sign? Would you see him as a replacement for Ollie Watkins, or would you see him as competition for Ollie Watkins? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's it from me on this video. Is it goodbye Emi Martinez? Is it hello Joan Garcia or Andriy Lunin as replacements? And is Jonathan David on his way to Aston Villa finally? Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, help us on the road to 6,000 subscribers. Make sure you comment below. Thank you for watching. And as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.